Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Right, okay, this afternoon we're going to go back to the A to Z of Scotch distilleries. As you probably remember, we did Macallan, so that was obviously the letter M. I'm going to stick with the letter M for one more or two more episodes of the show in actual fact, and look at the other powerhouse Speyside distillery, for want of a better term, and that is Mortlach. Now, as you know, the current owners of Mortlach, Diageo, have just pumped a load of money into it a few years ago, completely revamped the range, whacked the prices up, as these things seem to entail, and in, I guess, what they call the PR speak, repositioned the brand. God, I just love all that, you know. Basically, they've decided that they want to sort of turn Mortlach into their version of Macallan, and I'm guessing that's going to mean sort of all the Macallan-esque trappings of fancy packaging, decanters and photographs and all this kind of stuff. And I guess to a certain extent it's probably well overdue, actually, investing in one of your one of these sort of not so well known distilleries that for years all you could get was the Flora and Fauna 16-year-old, if you like your big sherry monsters, that is. I mean it wasn't bad. I mean, there was some good bottlings, lots of great bottlings, to be frankly honest with you. But anyway, so I thought it's going to be really nice to see if we can get under the skin, because there's some interesting facts that you may or may not know about the distillery, which we'll obviously get onto in a minute. So, as I have a tendency to have a number of samples, I rummage through the boxes, and I've tasted quite a lot of Mortlach in actual fact, and so I've split it into two. So this week we're going to look at some of the younger spirits, ranging from 7 to 16-year-old. And then next week we're going to look at some of the older spirits, and we've got some quite cracking older expressions, including two from the newly revamped distillery range. So that could be interesting if you want to tune in for that one, especially if you happen to work for Diageo, and see what I say about it. Anyway, so let's just talk about the distillery for a little bit. It's quite a pretty little distillery, looks pretty much on a pagoda roof, and all the sort of Scottish stone, all that kind of stuff looks really quite attractive. It was founded itself in 1823 by a chap called James Findlater, which changed through a few hands, and I guess the sort of most important sort of guy to sort of come into the sort of the distillery was a chap called George Cowie in 1853, who seemed to sort of be a fairly driving force behind the not necessarily the expansion of the distillery, but sort of its positioning and what it was doing, shall we say. I mean, it was time went on, and it was sold to eventually John Walker and Sons in, I think, 1923. John Walker and Sons was bought by DCL. DCL became Diageo. Yada yada yada. And like I said, not a great deal seems to have actually happened with the distillery's malt, apart from the bulk of it going into the Johnny Walker range, which seems to be sort of, as with most distilleries, that's their general purpose, is to supply fillings for the various blends, and so I guess there was no real sort of necessity to actually bottle it as a single malt. It was doing its job, and there was a couple, I think, released in the Rare Malt series, and like I said, the only Diageo bottling that was regularly on the shelves was the old Flora and Fauna bottling, the 16-year-old. So, and then they pump money into it. I mean, maybe they'll do the same with some of their other distilleries, like Linkwood, like I was saying in a previous episode of the show. Woefully underrepresented and produces some great old spirits. So, who knows? I mean, it does take quite a fair amount of money being pumped into reposition brands. So, I guess they're not going to do it every year. But anyway, I alluded to sort of like an interesting fact about the distillery, and the interesting fact is that they have, well, it's not really interesting, they got 6 stills. All right, they've got 3 spirit stills and 3 wash stills, which, you know, moderately sized distillery. I think has a capacity of 3.8 million litres. I think I read somewhere that they were planning to increase the capacity, but I don't know whether they've actually done so or not. But the interesting thing is, if you cast your mind back to a very early episode I did on the show about Springbank, Springbank has a curious process which they call 2.5 times distillation, and Mortlach has a very, very similar, but with a twist. So bear with me. Basically, they have all 6 stills are completely different sizes, shapes, and, you know, they're a right motley collection of stills, it has to be said. So basically, you've got wash still number 1 and number 2, which is about the same sort of size, 7,000 litres, and wash still number 3, which is a pretty big wash still, or a relatively big wash still at 16,000 litres, a kind of sort of standardish sort of size, I guess. Now, the interesting thing is that the heads from wash stills 1 and 2 feed into spirit still number 1, which is called the Wee Witchy, which is a pretty small spirit still, about 8,000 litres. The tails from wash still number 1 and number 2 feed into spirit still number 2, which is about 9,000 litres, and then the whole distillation process of wash still number 3 feeds into spirit still number 3, which is again a larger still at 10,000 litres. Now, the other interesting fact is that when they fill the Wee Witchy, they then do a second distillation. So effectively, you know, it is triple distilled in essence. And what they then do is they then blend all of these different styles that they create together, and they have quite a sort of a relatively large selection of different styles of malt to play around with, and then they shove it all in sherry casks. You don't taste it, so a little bit pointless, you might say. I kind of read somewhere that apparently every bottling that is produced does actually contain spirit from the Wee Witchy, because that is the Mortlach way, and like I said, tends to be sort of like chucked into sherry casks. But today we'll be looking at, well, all the samples that I have today have been aged in American oak. So hopefully we get a little bit under the skin of the actual style of the distillery. And given the fact that we're tasting, you know, relatively young spirits, hopefully that should, you know, that'll be quite interesting before we move on to the sort of the older spirits, which, if my memory serves me correct, I think I've got 2 or 3, possibly even more, that are sherry casks and quite old. So so it'll be interesting to see if we can kind of get under the skin of you know, what makes Mortlach tick. So anyway, that's enough waffle. Let's introduce this afternoon's little lineup. Okay, so as I said, all today's samples are or have been aged in American oak, so no sherry. We'll see what the young spirit gives us. We're going to kick off with a Hunter Laing Hepburns Choice 7-year-old. This was distilled in February of 2007 and bottled in August of 2014. Then we're going to progress on 1 year to an 8-year-old. This is been bottled in the Douglas Laing or Douglas McGibbon, Douglas Laing stroke Douglas McGibbon, Provenance series. This is an 8-year-old. It was distilled in April of 2006, bottled in December of 2014, obviously both at 46%. The third one we'll be looking at again is another Hunter Laing Hepburns Choice bottling, this time a 9-year-old, which was distilled, I believe, in 2005, although there's a bit of a question mark there, but was definitely bottled in June of 2014, again obviously at 46%. The 10-year-old we have here, which is sample number 4, again comes from the Provenance range. This was distilled in December 2002 and bottled in March of 2013, so a bit of an old one. Even older is this one, not only an age statement, but you know how long ago I got this particular sample. This is the only cask strength single cask bottling. Well, I mean, the Provenance, as you know, the Provenance and Hepburns Choice can be single cask, they can be multiple casks, I think a couple of casks, but the only one that actually sort of states what the cask number is obviously the Dewar Rattray 13-year-old, which was distilled in April of 1994, bottled in September 2007. So like I said, this sample's been knocking around, but I have smelt it and it's nothing wrong with it. And it came from cask 2793 and was bottled at 58.8%. And finally, we'll be looking at the 16-year-old. This was bottled by Carn in its strictly limited range, bottled at 46%, distilled in 1999 and bottled in January of this year. So a current up-to-date sample. Woohoo! Yeah, lucky you lot. Anyway, so that's this afternoon's little lineup. We'll be looking, like I said, at hopefully, quite an interesting tasting. So, without further ado, let's kick off with Hepburns Choice then. Right, okay, so 7 years old. Let's see what Mortlach is like at that age. Classic Spey. Not much oak at all, not that you would really expect it. So you get lots and lots of fresh barley, citrus, grass. There's a little soapiness right on the edge, but it's not unpleasant, it's not too intrusive. It's got some nice sweet barley. Yeah, it kind of ticks all the Speyside boxes in actual fact. I mean, it's obviously 7 years old, it's not majorly complex. There's a little bit of richness just kind of underneath the surface, but it's that lovely fresh barley, which is kind of, the sort of focal point of this particular nose, shall we say. So, it's getting a little bit more soapy though, it has to be said, so I'm going to taste it quickly. Palate. It's a bit short, there's not a great deal going on, which I suppose to a certain extent is to be expected, but again, it's pleasantly Speyside. It's got some crisp barley, a nascent edge of honey, a little bit of spice, a little bit of grass, pleasantly barley, nice, easygoing, aperitif kind of whiskey, the sort of thing that you would quite happily sort of start a session off, should we say. Absolutely nothing wrong with it, it's not the most complex of malts, but then it's 7 years old, so argument is that it does exactly what it says on the tin, which I think is pretty much true. So yeah, nice start, I think. Okay, let's move on 1 year and a different bottling company. Let's see what the nose gives us then. Oh, now that is quite different. Now, more toffied oak, a denser spirit. It's got some nice herbal honey. That's filling out really well. I mean, that's surprising, the sort of difference. I mean, admittedly, different casks mature differently, etc., etc. But it's quite a surprising difference for 1 year. I mean, yes, it's obviously been aged in a slightly more active oak cask or casks, but it has some lovely toffee, some lovely weight. But again, it's got some crispness, some nice barley, some citrus, touch of white fruit. Not much in the spice department, but again, balanced, nicely balanced and quite herbal. So again, really pleasant. Palate. As expected, a little bit more oak, a little bit more toffee, but all really nicely balanced. Actually quite estery, quite fruity, a little bit of banana, apricot, a touch of custard powder, nice citrus finish, crisp, clean, touch of barley on the end there. Again, we're not talking huge complexity, but a pleasant, interesting, balanced malt. And again, this wouldn't, I would imagine, have retailed for that much, mid-30s maybe. And this is the kind of thing that I'm always on the lookout for, a nice, whiskey that, you know, just retails in that sort of mid-30s price bracket, where a lot of people like to you know, spend up to that kind of level. So so yeah, pleasant, just really quite nice. Okay, so let's move on 1 year to the 9-year-old and see what's happening with this one. That's a little bit beefy. In actual fact, quite malty. I mean, there is a definite correlation between these two Hepburns bottlings. I mean, they're both quite fresh. Like I said, this has got a little bit more maltiness. It's an edge to it, a little bit of cardboard, which is kind of underneath the maltiness, so it's not kind of, you know, unpleasant. It's all kind of wrapped up in that sort of malty kind of character. There's a little bit of herbalness coming through, a touch of barley, a bit of oak, a little bit of toffee. Yeah, again, you know, it's okay. Palate. Got a bit of an edge. Quite malty, malt biscuits. Feels a lot younger in actual fact than the 7-year-old. Sort of a lot less developed. Again, a touch of oak. And not really a great deal much going on the palate, it has to be said, apart from the sort of malty biscuity kind of, you know, young spirit character. It's not spirity, it's not hard though. It's just sort of hasn't really kind of gone anywhere, should we say, but you know, not too bad, not too shabby. Right, on to the 10-year-old. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Oh, that's a lovely nose. Lots and lots of white fruit. Again, quite estery, slightly banana-y, apricot, touch of fudge maybe. Yeah, it's got that sort of edge to it, that sort of fudgy edge. Again, the oak is balanced, integrated, quite herbal, with a nice underlying richness. So it kind of seems to me that obviously I'm guessing that maybe, you know, the sort of triple distillation element gets used in a little bit, you know, I guess they play around with the percentage of that would give you a slightly higher tone, a slightly more sort of herbally, possibly herbally, certainly more sort of high toned fruit character, whereas the sort of standard sort of number 3 stills will probably give you a more kind of standard sort of richer malt. But this is really quite perfumed. It's really opening out quite nicely now. Yeah, nice and fruity. Yeah, ticks all the right boxes for a 10-year-old. You know, a little bit of complexity, bit of oak, fruitiness, easygoing, nice. You know, yeah, pleasant. Palate. And that's different, the palate. More like the previous bottling. It's richer, malty, almost starting to get a semblance of dark treacle coming through. Not so sort of light and effervescent. It's not quite got the fruity esters. Again, like I said, it's more malt based, richer, thicker. There is a nice juiciness to it, and it has got a pleasant mouthfeel and a pleasant character. But it's, you know, just one of those kind of classic whiskies that sort of where the nose is completely different to the palate, and it, you know, happens from time to time, and sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. But in this case, it is what it is. Again, you know, pleasant 10-year-old. No fireworks, but you know, no, not really. I would say a disappointment. So yeah. Nice bottle. Okay, so let's move on 3 years to the 13-year-old and see what this gives us. Now, this is more like Mortlach as I know it, shall we say. It is quite chunky and hefty. Again, really quite estery, lots of pineapple, white fruits, like perfume note to the fruit, a lot of malt, touch of oak. So it seems, that sort of once it's starting to get into its, younger teens, it's really starting to come into its own. Again, it could be what proportion they used from which stills in this particular cask, who knows, but it's a lovely nose. A little bit of spice coming through now, very soft, bourbony spice. Obviously quite a reasonably active cask. Vanilla, a little bit of almost kind of pollen notes, slightly dusty, some honey. Yeah, it's getting quite banana-y now. That's lovely. That is really very, very impressive. I must say that Rattray picked out a damn good cask on this one. Lovely. Palate. Oh, that's got a lovely finish. Yes, the extra alcohol is giving it some additional intensity, but it's fruity. Again, sort of barley, apricots, a little bit of unsweetened pineapple, a little bit of honey. Alcohol is obviously drying it a little bit, certainly on the finish. Touch of spice. Again, rich, broad, juicy, full flavour. Lovely aftertaste. A little bit of white chocolate I'm getting. Touch of almost toffee, but not quite toffee, sort of slight butter possibly. Yeah, that is really very, very nice. So yeah, hats off to AD Rattray for that bottling, and I'm afraid it's been long gone, so sorry to disappoint you. Okay, so let's move on to the final whisky for this afternoon, and yes, as you can see, the stand-in whisky glass is back. Another Glencairn bit the dust, as I have a tendency to do. I've been getting away with it pretty good. I haven't broken one for quite a while, so and then it was two almost in one night. Anyway, no, I hadn't drunk too much. I was putting it in a sock, don't ask, and it fell through the hole in the sock and just went shh. Anyway, back to the whisky. Let's see what the nose gives us then, shall we? That is a lovely nose. Oily, juicy, again, really fruity. Pineapple chunks in a light syrup. Apricot, barley. Oh wow! I mean, pineapples. I mean, stick your nose in this and you just go, oh my god, it's pineapples. It just reeks of pineapple. I mean, I suppose if you hate pineapple, you're going to hate this. But wow, really impressive nose. Touch of oak just kind of sat underneath that, which is not surprising given the fruitiness of the spirit. A little bit of white chocolate, some a little bit of soft spice on the edge. Oh, lovely. And yes, I think I have a bottle of this in the shop. So if this really sounds like your kind of whiskey and you love pineapples, and get yourself a bottle. I think it's about 60 quid-ish off the top of my head. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful nose. Really, really impressive. God, I can't stop smelling it. Palate. Pineapple! Oh, what a surprise. Big, full, juicy, rich, but it's got a really nice minerality, that sort of kind of edgy, almost Highland-esque kind of minerality. A little bit of oak, which is kind of creeping in now on the aftertaste. Really balanced again. Little bit of spice. Again, a touch of white chocolate. Lovely, absolutely delightful whiskey. Sort of whiskey you spend 60 quid on and you think, oh, that is just absolutely sublime. And yeah, damn good cask or two, as maybe the case may be. I forget now whether this is one or two, but anyway, if it's one or two, it doesn't really matter. It's bloody good. So hats off to Carn for that one. That's impressive. Okay, so let's sum this little tasting up. So, what have we learnt so far about Mortlach? Well, I think we can safely say that it doesn't really sort of come into its own character-wise until it starts to get to, its early to mid-teens. And how many other distilleries do we say exactly the same thing about? And underneath that, sort of 7, 8, 9, it's pleasant. It's, by the odd sort of slightly not so great bottling. Not that I'm saying that any of these are not so great, but it's kind of classic Spey, crisp, citrus, a little bit of, it kind of gives you an idea of sort of what it's going to develop like. And then when you sort of taste the 13-year-old, the 16-year-old, you suddenly go, that's Mortlach's character. Big fruit, sort of robust, sort of, so. And to be honest with you, you can see where they were getting at, Diageo, with the sort of whole idea of positioning it like Macallan, because it does share some very some similarities with Macallan. Certainly when you stick it in American oak. When you stick it in sherry cask, of course, it's a completely different ball game. But this is fascinating. This is how you get under the skin of a distillery. Taste it from American oak, and yes, you get some obviously American oak character, the vanilla, the sort of toffee, all that kind of stuff. But it really allows the sort of the distillery character to sort of shine through the lovely barley, the fruit, and that just does it for me. I mean, yes, I do like old sherry cask whiskies because they have their place, but again, it all comes down to the fact if you have a distillery that has a really nice, pleasant, complex character, why bother just shoving it in sherry casks? Just forget the sherry casks and just sort of bottle it in American oak and just sort of say, look, this is our distillery style. This is really nice, and it just so far, it's showing that Mortlach has a really lovely style. It has it is sitting in the more robust kind of style of Speyside whiskies, or lighter Speyside whiskies, given at what point in time you actually taste it. So yeah, there you have it. That's youngish Mortlach. Like I said, I mean, if it sounds kind of your cup of tea, look out for younger bottlings of Mortlach. They keep cropping up fairly readily, I have to say, and a lot of the independents do bottle them in, or from American oak casks, as they have a tendency to do with a lot of other distilleries like Sword and Macallan, and etc. etc. So you don't have to go out and just sort of buy the distillery bottling expressions. Although we will look at those, in the next episode of the show. So it will be quite interesting to see how they differ, if they do differ, from the independents. So there you go. That's this week's episode of the show. Mortlach, really interesting. Grab yourself a bottle. Certainly grab yourself a bottle of the Carn if you like pineapple, that is. So anyway, all that's left to say is good afternoon and good ramming.